Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of the Deal. I am Brother Kenneth, and I'm back at you again. This one we're going to talk about testing the spirit. Particularly, there's a variety of reasons why you want to test the spirit. You want to see if someone is actually possessed versus mental. That one is a little complicated. In some cases, if you have a supposed infestation, the only way you're really going to test the spirit is to provoke it, and that's very controversial. They call it religious provocation for more of a mainstream term. But it's not advised. You need to use your intellect, reasoning, what you know, your discernment, in other words, rely on praying and so forth to try to determine if there is an infestation of a demonic spirit or if it's just a purgatory spirit, for example. And remember when I said that word purgatory, that's a Catholic term for the other world place. It is a phase of existence between this world and heaven. They're going to heaven at some point, but they got issues they have to work out. What if they're worried about their family living without them? They might linger among their family for a while. God gives people time. There's different phases of this existence. The purging is only one phase. Okay, so testing the spirit. This was an interesting one. I'll give you a couple of cases here. What we're really trying to do here, starting with a person and possession, is we want to weed out the idea that the person is psychosomatic. It's in their own mind. It's psychological to some degree. And that's what we want to do in narrowing it down. But we try to do it on the other side, but we don't know if it'll work. And the reason is because degrees of demonic presence vary so greatly. An exorcist will tell you this. You go into a case, the demon could react immediately, or it'll suck it up for 10 or even 20 minutes. If it's a higher demon, it'll be harder to get out. It will suck it up and outreact. Even though it causes it pain to be before the crucifix, be reminded of Jesus' victory over sin and death, and they're getting touched with holy oil, holy water. All of these things are provoking it, but it's trying to suck it up. You can't see it gritting its teeth, but if you could see the demonic, and it had an expression you can read like a human, that is what you would see. So we have to understand that when we're trying to, provoke even, or something along the lines, which is the job for an exorcist. We don't do it in deliverance even. That's just too much. Too much for anybody outside of being a man of the cloth appointed by his bishop should do. And you're going to run into situations, if you're in the work as we are, where you have to do something. You just can't leave them there like that. So you can go hammering at it, and through the name of Jesus Christ, the intercession of his angels and saints, to get it to calm down, to stop for the time being. It doesn't mean you drove it out, but you temporarily got it to where it stopped. Okay, so testing the spirit. One case, the guy was talking to the woman on the phone, and he suspected that it was mental. And so what he did was he thought he would fake a prayer language, fake the tongue speaking, and faking it, in other words, making up the bibble-babble kind of talk. So he says, I'm going to say a prayer. Basically, what the idea was to make her think that he was doing a prayer when he wasn't. He was making it sound more like it's intelligible speech, like he's mixing different tongues and stuff of different languages we know on earth. And the woman reacted violently and started acting like she was possessed. And he's like, on a rare case, this demonic spirit might be so clever enough to actually react there so that it helps to pin the idea that they're psychologically disturbed, and therefore they won't get help to the church, because the intermediary, the person who's actually doing the testing and the interviewing to bring the case to the diocese, for example, is not getting the impression the person's really possessed, because they're reacting as if they're mental. In other words, reacting to the non-sacred, but they think it's the sacred, so it's in their mind. Well, not exactly. Demons go to great lengths to try to make you think that it is mental. So we got to be careful on that one, too. It's not an end-all, but it is a red flag to consider, because the higher-level demons are going to be more likely to do that, and then the lower. And if the person dabbled in heavy lengths of, occult practices, and they would be more likely to do one rather than someone who has some lower degree of spirits. But all this stuff is taken in for an intake and all considered together. That's why we really can't say that one thing is an indication. The church likes to have 4 or more of these type of things. But so on that one, we just learned that a demon can basically try to go to great lengths to make the person seem like they're mental, so it becomes hard to weed out. I'll give another case right here. It goes a little different on the side. I wanted to discreetly, I did the opposite, sneak in a sacred item. The demon will know it's there, okay? They will know, because you can't hide a sacred item in your pocket. You can't fool the demon. They're able to see this stuff. Supernaturally, they're able to See it in my pocket. They know this stuff. Not unless they're prevented by God the Father, as they didn't know what they were really doing with Jesus. They didn't know his plan. They didn't know that when he died on the cross, victory, that they played right in his hands. So in some cases, God will block permissible will. He will block this information from the demons. But usually, you'd expect them to know anything as an item it's blessed. They'll know when it's a relic. It doesn't matter if it's encased in your hand, in the purse, buried in your backyard, or whatever. They'll know. So in this case, I asked the mother for a quarter, and part of the reason is because I don't want to make a third-class relic out of a quarter that I carry in my pocket, because I'll have a relic in my pocket, and then the quarter's sitting in there, and it becomes a third-class relic from proximity effect, right? Even without saying a prayer to some degree. So what I do is I ask for a fresh quarter. It sounds like a magician's trick. Hey, could I have a quarter from somebody in the audience, please? Thank you very much. So she gives me a quarter. And so what I do is I switch it with a relic. But I do it once and I do it twice. And I switch it back and forth. So I put it on the back of his neck. The relic is in a small reliquary. It looks like the size of a silver dollar. And I don't remember what saint that one was particular. We have many. I have 5 relics in here, including St. Gemma. So, first-class relics in particular have to be the ones that you will make third-class relics. So what we do is that we put the relic on the back. He thinks it's a quarter. It's nice and cold. And I have a video camera. We record all our interviews with a video camera. We do it in this case because I'm videotaping his face. I want to see his reactions. I want to see every part of him to see if there's any part of his body that's reacting. So I have a pulled shot where it has his feet touching the floor, him sitting in the seat, and he does not react whatsoever. What's that mean? It could mean the same thing as I said before. It could be a stronger demon. It's just an 18-year-old boy. We don't expect it to be a stronger demon, especially by the means that it got in there from drugs, that the spirit could suck it up. Yes, it can. So you hold it there for a minute. You ask him what this feels like. Cold. That's it. It was cold. It was a little cold that day. Actually, it was kind of freezing. We had turned the heater on in the car on the way over and everything. It was real breezy. And so that's a reaction. So I switched it back with the quarter. And there was no reaction. There's no difference at all. Okay, so that's another thing. But again, the demon can, it's a flag. It says that, what kind of demon is this? That it's not reacting to provocation of any sort. So that's a quiet provocation. We don't go around the house saying, in the name of Jesus Christ, reveal yourself or anything like that. That's dangerous stuff. And you shouldn't do that unless you have the priest there to finish it up. And he's there for the full exorcism, minor rite, or whatever he's going to do. Don't do that as a deliverance team member, a discernment team or whatever, just because, some of these ghost hunters in the past, like they fly all over to California and then they're there for a few days and we got to get back and there's no sign of a demon here, but we think there's one here. So they go about the house provoking it with holy water to make something happen so they can witness it. What for? Well, see, if you're in the office already, they don't need proof from us. They're relying on what we tell them, so we don't have to provoke to get the proof to get an exorcism. There was even one in New York that we actually got the steps done by talking to them on the phone, and we didn't even visit the place in person. All the things were in the right indication. They had a priest go over there and basically bless the place, and he got his validation. He went to the bishop 30 days later. It's done. That's an old idea, that you need to go in there and you need to get all this flash photography, set up all these, devices and stuff to take pictures. That's for the ghost hunter to brag about and show at lectures. That's what they want. The Catholic Church may have needed that in the 70s from people who aren't with their church, but if you're involved with the church, you don't need to go to extra great lengths to prove that they're possessed, or they won't do the house, for example. If they don't get proof that the house is haunted, they won't go there and do it. Well, there was red tape, so there was that to some degree, but that varied from diocese to diocese because they needed more information, basically to convince them, especially if it came from outside the church, like it did with Ed and Lorraine Warren. They didn't work in the church. That they would go and get this evidence and bring it to them and then show it to the bishop or whatever. But see, back then, when you go too far back, even in the 80s, in the 70s, about 72, I think there was only 3 exorcists in all of the United States. So that means some guy from California or Kansas City might have to fly all across the whole country or drive however he travels to get him there. We talked about this before. Things have changed. The red tape was there for that reason. Because imagine going all the way across the country and he's nuts. We drove 4 hours to find out this kid we did the quarter and relic test on was it was just because he did these drugs and he fried his brain. It was like if you had too many LSD trips. I mean, that might have actually brought in demonic possession, because as we say, when you're taking drugs, you take your brain offline and take it away from the driver's seat, and a demon can step in there. And when will it end? It's hard to say. When the person's drug wears off, like it does when the anesthesias wear off and the person stops acting like a violent animal, and then they go back to their normal state. That's happened in emergency rooms and operating rooms, by the way. We know that. Everybody knows that. They've heard the stories, but that's what's happening. Okay, so testing the spirit. You think it would be a little more into detail because we're talking about the St. John. I don't like to tell other people's stories. We talk about our own accounts and so forth, or historically known ones that might have been in a famous movie. In the Bible, when St. John's talking about it, this has been used when you can get them to proclaim that Jesus is the Son of God, he's the Christ. And, if you think about it, have them say the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed. Everything in there would be impossible for a demon unless it's a very high one. And that's the kind of one that would be possessing, somebody who's higher up in office, somebody who would be worth it, not a 12-year-old child. You'll get the lower level ones, even if they seem to be more powerful. And or it may be like in the case of Ronald Doe or Nicole Aubrey in 1580, I think it was, where we talked about the Roman ritualist wrote trying to get that demon out. It was just a 15-year-old girl. What kind of demon could she draw in? And it didn't sound like she did occult practices, according to church records, that drew it in. But it was a test. It was not a test. Well, it was a test. There were several things, and one of them, of course, was to teach the church how to deal with these cases when they came. And we think the Exorcist movie was God's part on itself, even though it was kind of vile and, not kind of, on some of the things. It brought awareness. Father Amorth, who's deceased now, Vatican exorcist and so forth, he said he was happy when that movie came out because it brought awareness. It did. Unfortunately, it also brought with it a lot of paranoid schizophrenics and people who basically thought they were possessed. So thus begins the weeding of I'm sick, I'm mental, versus I'm spiritually afflicted, possessed, whatever, oppressed. TV shows are doing that, making people think that they're haunted when they're not. So we got to go to great lengths. That's why we test the spirit. But more so, you can only test it pretty much on a person, because the only way to test it in a house is to provoke it. And don't do that unless you're an exorcist priest who's ready to do exorcism and do the final battle. Because, quite frankly, provoking is not only controversial, it's dangerous even for the priest to do that, just for the sole purpose of actually getting it to jump up and go, ow! Like when you give it a hot foot and it doesn't know its foot sticking out, and you light matches between the toes like in those old Tom and Jerry cartoons. And that's something that you don't want to do in some cases, obviously, because provoking draws payback, and it could be violent. Sometimes people are going to find out the hard way and they're not as protected as they seem. But you got to follow things according to God's laws. So like I said, don't use these devices that are basically Ouija boards, Frank's box and other things, thinking you're going to be protected because it's done in the name of charity. No. Any more than Solomon, doing magic, because he's doing it for the sake of his kingdom. You can't go to evil and make deals with the devil for the sake of your family. No evil is justified for this. Can't go to the devil and then get something that's supposed to be good. So on the ending of the testing of the spirit, do not test the spirit in a house. If you have any kind of reputation at all, even preceding being inside, fully embraced by the bishop in the church, you should be able to go to the church and they'll trust you, at least to send in a priest out there, and maybe who can bless the person or house in itself. But I don't even understand how it's like, if it's still easy, even with the skeptical priest and diocese, I don't know why it was all needed with all that hoopla, getting all this evidence, except for their own personal slideshows. People like the Warrens, for example. Sorry to, disappoint the fans of the Warrens and all that. We tell it like it is. I'm not really criticizing them to such degree, but maybe they wanted the proof on tape and video, not just words, because they already were about sensationalism and the from the paranormal side from ghost hunters. Because if the people aren't trusted, they're going to want this information. So I think basically, if you're not trustworthy, if you go under the umbrella of a ghost hunting team, they're going to be automatically leery and suspicious. You'll probably have to bring more evidence in. But don't assume anything yet. Maybe try to see what you can get done in your right case. Or get into the contact of, going through the procedure of it. Okay, well, we're going to end on that note and saying that testing the spirit is dangerous. It can be done cleverly to try to discern whether or not it's a possession or a demonic Or is it more mental or all mental? Because a lot of times it can be both, because over time it'll wear on their psychological. They might have automatic signs and symptoms because they are on medication. They're older and senile, or they're having problems with different mental disorders that are related to living alone and paranoid schizophrenia or anything. And there could be a demon there because of those things made them weak. Depression's made people weak enough to have a demon come in and out at will. When they went on depression med, the demon wasn't so easy to come in because it gave them a fighting chance. It leveled the playfield. God bless everybody. We'll see you next time in the Art of the Deals, or rather, you'll see me. Bye-bye.